I suppose there is definitely some action happening on that front.
Yeah. I agree.
Rishabh, all yours, yeah.
Rishabh.
Yeah, I think we can start now. Thanks, RK. Thanks, Matthew. And thanks, Aditya, for the very interesting discussion. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fifth webinar in the series of our virtual meetups, which is a joint initiative between Global Linker and Vadhwani Foundation. Today, we have with us Mr. Aditya Prakash from Vadhwani Foundation, Mr. Matthew Isaac and Mr. Ramakrishnan Venkateshwaran from VentureBean, who are a part of the huge network of advisors that the Vadhwani Foundation has. So just to give you a brief introduction, Global Linker is an online networking platform which is also AI powered, and it's basically got 270,000 SMEs already on board from across various parts of the world. Global Linker allows SMEs to network, find more buyers and suppliers, create their online stores, and get access to various other features like knowledge components and discounts on SME relevant products and services. Vadhwani Foundation has been set up with the core objective of accelerating growth for small businesses across emerging economies, and by this they would also directly be contributing to the increase in employment rates and directly contributing to the GDP of economies. We have this initiative where we have partnered Global Linker and Vadhwani Foundation, where Vadhwani Foundation is basically allowing access to their huge and tremendous network of experts and consultants. And Global Linker obviously would be partnering and giving access to the huge network of SMEs that we have. And together we would like to help SMEs grow their business and contribute directly to that. So I'll hand over the stage to Aditya now to just take you through the flow of the presentation and introduce the initiative as well.
Thanks, Rishabh. Thanks a lot for the introduction. On behalf of Vadhwani Foundation, I welcome our speakers as well as all the attendees in this webinar. As you must know that this is the second part of the two-part webinar that we have been doing since last week about the strategies that SMEs should take in terms of managing their funds for not only growth as well as sustenance, but also to focus on survival. As Rishabh rightly mentioned, that at Vadhwani Foundation, our core objective is to help SMEs along their value chain in terms of supporting them for finding solutions to business issues, as well as helping them connect to advisors as well as consultants who are industry experts and help them along the way to grow substantially. During these times, we have reorganized ourselves, and we are reaching out to SMEs like you digitally in terms of giving advisory services, as well as helping you connect for any specific issues you might have after the webinars. Just to have a recap of what we discussed in the previous webinar, as many of you might have attended the previous one as well. So in the previous webinar, we discussed about why survival is going to be priority during these times. We also addressed what you need to focus on essentials and what you need to let go at this time, on zero-based busting, etc. This particular session will discuss more about what approaches you should take to keep yourself prepared for fundraising. What are the valuation approaches you need to take? A little bit about the investor sentiments in the market and potential funding avenues for SMEs. To introduce our esteemed speakers for this webinar, we have with us Mr. Matthew Isaac, who is the co-founder and director of VentureBean Consulting Private Limited. Matthew comes with close to 3 decades of professional experience in business planning, growth, scale up, end-to-end operations management. He is an IIM Ahmedabad alum. Our second speaker is Mr. Ramakrishnan Venkateshwaran. He is the president of VentureBean Consulting and close to 3 decades of experience, and his core expertise lies in lending, risk management, financial control, and fundraising. So I would like to hand over the baton to our speakers, Matthew and RK. Over to you.
Thanks, Aditya, Rishabh. Good morning, all, and thank you for sparing the time to join us today on this webinar. Thanks to Wadhwani Foundation Global Linker for this platform where we can engage with SMEs in need. I'm the founder director of VentureBeam Consulting. We are based in Bangalore. We are an 8-year-old firm, niche business growth consulting firm. And we help businesses grow, and both from a consulting standpoint, from the people standpoint, and from corporate finance. RK, my colleague, heads our corporate finance.
Good morning. This is Ramakrishnan. I head the corporate finance practice for VentureBeam. I've been in the space of banking and financial services and strategy consulting for the last 32 years. And predominantly, working on corporate finance policies, internal controls, risk management. I've been a lender for close to about 18 years, and hence comfortable understanding the lending horizon across all products and services.
Okay, so let me just take you through this. Give me a minute while I get the PPT up. Okay, is this visible?
Yeah, Matthew.
Okay. Again, today we see the series, the two-part series has been about how to manage and raise funds. For those of you all who were there last time around, we had talked about the survival part and how to manage funds during first. Today's agenda is about, during these challenging times, how are we going to be ready for fundraising? What do we need to do for valuation? And for sustenance.
You may have to speak to the mic.
Okay. For sustenance and growth, what do we need to do, and what are the sources available for fundraising? Okay, so these are the three aspects of this. We will take a little time on this and then open up the second half for questions. So all questions and I think you can prepare for them, or you can put them on chat, and we'll address that during that point. Okay. Just a quick recap of what we did last time around. Last time was more about survival during this crisis period, like Aditya very nicely summarized. We have to focus on survival. Split between the essentials and the non-essentials from a cost standpoint. And even within the essentials, look at multiple scenarios of what are the, what are the different levels of cost in different scenarios. Key over here is the third point I'd like to emphasize, that is your business plans, all our business plans have to be re-looked at and look at plan A, plan B, plan C, okay, multiple scenarios. And in this, we have to monitor our funds flow through zero-based budgeting. We've all been doing zero-based budgeting, but now the need of the hour is it needs to be done month on month, okay? And our key takeaway from last time's webinar was replacing our unique selling proposition, USP, with our new norm, which is LSP. LSP is liquidity, solvency, and profitability. Liquidity important to ensure continuity or survival. Solvency to gain trust within the ecosystem, and profitability, unit economics, is very important from an investor standpoint. So just keep these in mind. A couple of points here. Essentials.
Generally, the solvency factor is more critical for bankers and creditors. So they will definitely want to ensure that this is there.
Yeah. All right. So the key takeaways here: essentials, non-essentials, zero-based budgeting, month on month, LSP. Okay, just keep this as the base as we move into today's situation. Our focus is that it's survival of the quickest. Okay. And what we're talking about here is we have to be able to take a view on the internal and external environment. Okay, before we go further, I'd like to share 3 examples of guys who we have worked with, who have come to us with funding. By the way, 90 to 95% of the people who we work with come in saying we need funding. But when we start distilling the requirement further, and then the problem definition or the urgent and important stuff is elsewhere. Let me give you those 3 examples. Here was a young guy who was an in-revenue business and came to us saying, Matthew, RK, I have gone to 30 investors. I have mailed them. I have talked to most of them. Only 2 have responded back saying, we'll come back to you. And that's the line he was quoting them. We'll get back to you. Of the remainder, they'll say, some of them responded saying we received it, no commitment on thing. That's about it, nothing else. When we looked at his business plan, and I'm just leaving that point. 30 guys, only 2 said, we'll get back to you, nothing else. Here was a second case of a team of 2 guys smart guys from engineering colleges who had spent 40 lakhs in building a product. And they said, we are ready, we want to launch, and product is ready, all the features, everything is done. We need investment. And when we looked at the business proposition there, it was in a sector where it was very crowded, and some of the earlier players were already dropping off or closing down. Third example.
So here, critical here is to understand the MVP. When we say MVP is minimum viable product. There have been situations where the entrepreneurs typically look at their perception of what the MVP is, instead of looking at what the customer wants. So our recommendation here is to not preempt the customer behavior, but rather break it into multiple parts before reaching the ultimate MVP. So the customer has to define MVP rather than the product developer or product owner.
Yep. And the key part there is, for investment readiness or for your business scalability model, one of 2 things have to be really have to be solved out, answered. The first point is, are your business or your products and services, are they solving a problem, or are they enhancing customer experience or convenience? It has to fall into one of these 2 buckets very critically, and that is one of the premises for fundraising itself. Okay. The third example I wanted to give you was, we worked with a celebrity person and for his technology company, and I'm not able to take the name, but we went through 16 iterations of his business plan because of the fundraise that he was doing. So we had to get it so finite in terms of answering all the questions and stuff. Net for fundraise, look at your business model, look at the MVP. What are we talking about? What is the need that our business or our proposed business products are planning to address? Is it for convenience, or is it solving an actual problem? And like RK said, let the MVP be defined by the customer rather than it internally. Okay. Now that's what we're talking about, trying to assess the key internal and external environment. We have to look at our target audience, and we have to start looking at, in the current situation, which of our target audience is, when are they likely to start buying again, and what is the time frame for us to get in? Has the demand shrunk? If so, how much of the pie can we get? How much of time is it going to take us to convert a deal? This is very critical in defining and it will come forward also in the following slides. Your target audience, time taken to convert, and the effort also, and in terms of how much of business do you expect to get?
Yeah, and your target audience, the periphery of your target audience has also to be reduced to an extent where you can make proper assessment rather than being too broad-based. Because today it is about understanding each of those sentiments which will redefine your strategy.
That's the good point RK is making, because suppose you're looking at a business which is which is in all 3 segments, which is B2B, which is B2C, and B2B2C. Try and refine down, okay, in which sectors am I serving them? In those sectors, take geographies further. So you have to create a sort of a funnel which is coming in from a broad base down to who your actual target audience is, and then start applying these metrics of time taken to convert, size, average order value, effort, reward, ROI. Okay. For all this is critical for point 3 here, because like we've mentioned, it is critical for our companies and enterprises to look at the cash burn, both from a sustenance point of view and also from an investment, credibility point of view. How long will our cash reserves work? Is it going to be for 10 months, 12 months? Can we look at it? How much of it is what we have right now in our cash reserves? How much is going to come in from our sales? And this is going to be based on the zero-based budgeting that we are continuously going to be engaged in. So the revenue, I mean, the cash inflow from the revenue sales and the probability of that, the time frame of that is what will define a lot of credibility that you will build up with the investment and the banking communities.
And the continuity of the investor.
Absolutely. Okay. When you have the fourth point is more to do with managing costs. We'll have to start from the top of the pyramid downwards in terms of, so basically now the need of the hour is for small enterprises and small and medium enterprises to look at the owner promoter levels and the head of function levels. There has to be more skin in the game. Okay, the cost aspects has to be looked at very finely, more linkages to the variable part of it in terms of,
especially for those startups who are already funded through various types of investors, it is critical for the CEO, CXO levels to showcase their intentions of continuing the game.
yeah.
So it is all about creating that trust, the enhanced trust which we are talking about.
Okay, so let's be very clear about this. We're dwelling on this because from an investment standpoint, especially from just investors, not from the banking sector, it's not just about the idea. It's not just about how good your plan might look. It is also about the team and the softer part of stuff, which is usually not said. Okay, I'll give you one very good instance where RK and I were talking to an impact fund, and one of the promoters was someone who was working in a large IT company. And, in terms of, he insisted that he was paid out as part of the projection. That person had insisted that a huge amount of money be shown as salary payable to him because that was his condition for going in. I leave it to you to figure out whether the impact fund actually invested in that firm or not. Critical for the owners and promoters to show intent. Okay. Like what we've mentioned a little while before, the key in the name of the game changer today will be about unit economics. We've all heard what this unit economics is. We've seen it, read about it, heard about it. But what we need to understand, let's try and understand what unit economics is. And I would request all of you to take a keen look at your respective businesses when it comes to this. The first point is that any businesses that are modeled on subscription revenue, please look at the lifetime value, that is LTV, and the customer acquisition cost. Simple funda. If you're looking at a customer who's taking a subscription from you month on month, take an average of his lifetime. Let's say he is with you for 7 years. What is the cost, or what is the value you expect to get from him if he is your customer for 7 years versus what is your cost of acquiring that customer and retaining him? Okay.
The critical part here is to retain him.
Yes.
Not only retention of customer, but also retaining the revenue from these customers.
Okay, this could apply. I mean, this could apply to both those businesses which are primarily on the B2C side. However, also here you can look at it slightly differently from a B2B angle as well. Suppose you are, there is a customer who you need, say, it's taking 6 to 9 months to be able to get a thing. Okay, look at how much time it's taking. Maybe he will put pressure, and the bigger the client, he will say, okay, do a pilot for me free. Do X amount of it. You start small, give it to me at cost or lower cost, and if you do that well, then I will increase. Please take a look at what is it that you are expecting to get, the probability of that, and what is your cost and effort in that. Finally, when many businesses tend to lose out on this, okay, I'm going to get a 2 crore order from that customer. If you are spending more than 20-30% of your marketing, sales and marketing and other efforts on this, where is the margin going to come from? So look at it in terms of a lifetime value of the customer and the customer acquisition and retention cost. RK, anything to add?
Perfect, Matthew.
Okay.
Yeah.
So please also look at, for what we spend, when are you going to get the returns back? A simple thumb rule that is always there: sales and marketing costs need to be 5 times, the revenue needs to be 5 times, or 5 times or 10 times that. Minimum 10 times. When I'm saying 10 times, that means sales and marketing costs are 10%. Now you need to look at your P&L and see whether the 10% will sustain this, because there are other overheads as well. people also need to look at online and offline type of thing. Let me take an example of a construction company, real estate company, which was about 200 crores, which we worked with. Okay, they had both the, offline and online channels of getting customers. Their budgeted spend on both was about 40 lakhs. Per month. Out of that, 60% was going on digital. Yes, they were, in terms of the sales team was coming and reporting 1,000 leads generated. Closures were in single digits. Of the 1,000, many of the leads that were there, the funnel just shrunk because we are generating all sorts of unqualifiable leads. So please take a look at which channel is giving you the biggest bang for the buck. Okay. And when you're looking at offline and online, please look, even in online, there are multiple ways. People sometimes I think I'm not an expert here, but people wrongly think that, oh, let's run Facebook campaign. Let's run LinkedIn campaign. Do you know the cost per lead of each of those which are coming in? This is just a lead coming in. It's not yet qualified. One lead coming in, let us take, you have a 10% chance of a conversion, and then the average order value also applies. The multiplier effect of the cost is massive. Okay. So please get to understand each of these before you take a decision of, I'm going to spend so much money on this. Okay. Without understanding the channel, without understanding the ROI and the expected return, pause and look at your the payback period, because
and more importantly, we go back to the cash burn situation.
Absolutely.
No, there is no investor who is willing to fund cash burn. So it is very critical for you to understand and emphasize on why those cash burn is required, and actually justify to them that this is the right expenses which we are incurring.
Okay, so it is very critical to look at, for if your business is a B2B business, look at which are the channels that you need to use and what is the bang for the buck there. I think someone was mentioning recently, we were talking before the webinar started, that some functions, especially customer acquisition, interactions, and some back office, all of these are now going virtual. Okay. Cost of acquisition definitely comes down. Okay, so look at which are the channels of marketing, which is either online, offline. Look at the productivity of the sales team. For example, people also look at how many calls need to be made, how many customer visits. Earlier, it was customer visits face to face would be 2 or 3 based on how many you get in a day. Now, can we look at more? But
and each of these decisions are based on the type of revenue you're earning, whether it
Absolutely.
is transactional, project based, or services.
Yeah. So it's very critical to map the nature of your business, nature of your sales, to the marketing effort required. Which one is going to give you bang for the buck? Primarily with the bottom line, look at what is giving you the best impact and how much can you conserve cash.
Yeah.
Okay.
And more importantly, this will also help you to remodel your business and see where all there is a possibility of getting high recurring revenue. And thus, this will enable you to reduce your cost of acquisition significantly.
Yeah. And please don't look at it unidimensionally, saying if I spend 10 rupees on sales and marketing effort, I will get 80 rupees in the sale or something like that. It's not just that. Please look at the time taken also. Please look at recurring spends that might need to be there. Look at the tightness on your system and the impact on margins.
And the lifetime value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Please look for opportunities where once you got into a customer or you got the door open, what else can you get as share of wallet, or what else can you cross-sell or upsell? I'll give you another good example. There's a client of ours who we've worked with for 4 years. We've tripled their revenues working with them. From just Bangalore, now they are pan Southeast Asia and across India. Simple example, his main clients were hotels and they were selling blinds. Now, for the hotels, they are coming back asking for uniforms. They are asking for, some of them have even asked for rice and iron and steel. Okay, you need to look at what is it that your customer wants, what is it you can provide. The same hotels are asking for masks and sanitizers now and PPEs. Okay, so there's multiple opportunities for cross sell, upsell. It might not have been what you have done before, but is there a possibility that it's an adjacency? Can we pivot slightly? That's the question of remodeling of business. Okay, anything to add on before we move to the next
No,
slide?
Matthew. Next.
Okay. Okay, for valuation, please understand there is a basic line. Before I hand off to RK, I want to make one point. Please understand in these new normal, valuation discussions are going to be intense, more intense they were before. Okay, and RK will dwell on the reasons why.
Irrespective of in whatever situation or condition of the investment or the investor is in, the investor looks at a fair bit of upside, and these have to be risk adjusted. When I say risk adjusted, typically they look at those investment avenues which are risk free, which could be say for example in India it is the India 10-year bond, India government bond, or any other investments which are perceived to be zero risk or whatever. Thereafter, they factor the country risk, their expectation of what would happen to this company. So there is a company risk premium which is provided, there is a industry premium which is provided, so on and so forth. At this point in time, where there's a major pandemic which has hit the global scenario, most of the investors will react independent of what we think. These could be based on information, which is most likely to be third-party analysis, because most of them would want to look at someone else validating their thought process, rather than pitching in and saying that, yes, they are willing to take a bet on this is the way the investment scenario is going to move from here on. And most of them would be in risk-off situation. So when I'm saying risk-off situation, they would like to conserve cash so that they wait for opportunities when the revival happens, or look at those sectors which would have been very highly valued during the pre-COVID days, and look at those opportunities in a much differently, much lower valuation than what it was earlier. So these are all purely based on opportunistic movement of the investor, and every opportunistic movement they take is all risk adjusted. They are going to be significantly focused on convertibles. So when I say convertibles, most of the investors from say since the time the startup phenomena took off, say sometime in 2014-15 onwards, they have tried to safeguard their investments in a significant manner. That is, they look at the cushion as provided by debt instruments, but an upside which is typical to an equity investment, which could be multiple times the equity which they are willing to forego. So these convertibles are based on milestones, events happening. So some of those milestones could be your ability to achieve a pre-decided sales revenue, pre-decided EBITDA levels. Okay, there could be situations where valuation is something which is confusing. So they would want to wait for a larger investor to take a bet before they convert their investments. So these are all typical investor behavior, whether it is at the earliest stage of say an angel, a seed investor, a slightly higher level of risk-taking investor, so on and so forth. But there is another set of investor behavior, which is the private equity. So private equities are those who are willing to put in large sums of money, but take bets based on that particular company in relation to an industry. So that it is all related to the value which they can create by participation. So most of these private equities have got solid people who are willing to put their skin in the game and build a company. So their expectation of returns would be much lesser than the risk takers like the venture capital funds. Okay, but the value which they put in would be sizable in order to enhance the value proposition of that particular company. The other risk which is likely to hit during this time is the buyback agreements. There is a lot of possibility that investors who have invested and are there's an agreement or contracted to have a buyback by the founders, they would want to invoke these agreements. These are possibilities if there is a lack of trust, or it could be the lack of trust could be with the founders, the lack of trust could be with their assessment of the industry, the lack of trust could be on various other counts which they feel is an issue for their investments. There is another thing which could crop up here is the investors who are invested into these funds may have a very different take. They could come from countries which are now completely in risk of situation. So they would want their money back. So these are all some of the typical investor behaviors which keep coming up. Okay.
Yeah.
And the third risk which we look at is the drag along agreements. So when I'm saying drag along, investors could have identified certain companies where they are more comfortable with. So they would want to completely stay invested in those. These could be competitors, these could be synergistic or opportunistic associations, which the investors would want to look at. At this point in time, they would want to drag the promoters as well. These are all minor. Drag along and drag along are available to minority investors. So it doesn't make sense for us to think if someone is minority, they don't have the rights. These are very critical parts in an investor shareholder agreement, which could define the behavior of an investor.
So the key thing for us as business owners looking for investment, it's critical for us to have continuous dialogue with our existing set of investors or the ones that we have already been in contact with.
Yeah, and any rewriting of the business plan, remodeling of the business should be done after taking the investors into confidence, the board into confidence.
Okay.
Sometimes you can even do along with them.
Yeah, it makes sense because as their investment philosophy is changing based on the risk, based on their profile and their risk elements, our business plans also should be rewritten according to what our investors would require. What's critical here, RK, is I think you should dwell a little bit on the DCF and the multiples aspect.
Yeah, so typically what happens is the most standard valuation methodology is the discounted cash flow mechanism, which is futuristic, which looks at all elements of risks, which looks at all elements of expenses, including tax, depreciation, so on and so forth. The good part is that the assumptions are more or less trackable because most of the elements are objective, all out there in the public domain. But the difficult part here is DCF is based on a future projection. Any mismatch in the assumptions of the analyst who does the valuation or the company which provides that valuation would be very difficult to defend. And more so during this period where revenues are looking slightly stretched. It could even go as stretched as say 12 months down the line, and we are not really sure. There's a lot of uncertainty surrounded within the revenue generation part. There are other aspects which are the country risk, which I've already dwelled upon. Okay, so depending on those risks, the investor could take a call. Any valuation which is based on comparable multiples is also tricky because all comparables will be related more to the peer against whom these comparables are being done. So unless and until you as a promoter is glued on to what is happening in your industry, more so with those people who are competing with you, it is going to be difficult for you to digest the fact that there could be a down valuation for your company. There's a very good example which recently came across to me. There was an angel investor who was invested into a company with a futuristic proposition, a good idea. But now the angel investor feels that the idea is too early for India, and especially this time, he feels that this company can go for a toss. He has decided to sell the equity at free cost. This could have been because his loss of trust on the promoters' ability to execute this idea. So it is so critical that the company, the promoters should take these people into confidence, be with them. It is essential that the investor is participating in the remodeling or planning the revival.
Yeah. And for example, I'd like to add on there, for example, people have been used to, oh, we are in the IT space or we are in the product space. So, X multiple of the top line in the third year or X multiple of my PBT, EBITDA. It was earlier discussions. The new normal
not going to be there.
This new normal doesn't work that. It will not work that way.
Okay, and everything will be proof based.
Yes. Okay, so let's not, what worked earlier will not
based
work.
of execution. Okay,
yes.
That is very important.
What worked earlier is not necessarily the new normal. Okay. So I'll move on to, some of the investor sentiments. RK, you want to quickly go through this because we have to leave some time for Q&A.
Yeah. So in the investors are now clear about those companies which they would not want to address. Those who are finding it, those companies that are funded will find it difficult to get additional funding to address only cash burn unless and until there is a clear roadmap. This roadmap has to be adjusted to the runway with a clear indication of reduction of cash burn, and all has to be focused on customer sentiments towards that particular industry. So irrespective of whatever happens here, it is the customer who is going to redefine your revival. The early stage companies will again have to rework their plans. If they have done plans, say, just prior to February or whatever, these plans have to now come back to a situation where they plan bootstrapping before attempting fundraising. They have to use their own funds, reach out to angels. There are angels who are in networks who are still active. This could be because they are looking at those options which could be very good synergistic with their existing investments. This is again a de-risking strategy for those angels. Idea will find very less takers unless and until having clear relationship with favored segments. And those favored segments are agri-tech, health tech, healthcare services, deep tech. These are all most preferred areas. Matthew?
I want to give one example of, this was a discussion which happened yesterday of someone who was in the sustainability products, and her key clients prior to COVID were FMCG, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, resorts, all of that. And her opening line to me was, my target audience is all wiped out. What do I do? Okay. So, and this is in sustainable products still. So you have to do a slight pivot in terms of applicability to different sectors.
The other segment is food processing, electrical vehicles, and anything related to industry, to this industry, like batteries, the infrastructure for electric vehicles, so on and so forth, the renewable and clean energy. These are segments which are definitely getting more interest. The food processing industry, for those SMEs who have facilities, who have logistics capabilities, who have godowns and warehouses, this is a good industry to be focused on. Banks and financial institutions also are positive. Fintech is a very important segment which is transforming the way loans are being disbursed in this country. Wealth management is being addressed in this country. Equity investments are addressed in this country. This fintech while it is neutral, unless proven differentiation and ability to sustain during this present situation is there. Because whatever is going to happen henceforth would be the differentiation which these are going to provide. Because all the biggies, whether it is banks, NBFCs, are all looking at reduction of cost, and that reduction of cost can only happen if they are digitally transformed, whether it is about their acquisition cost, whether about their ability to brand their products much more emphatically. All these things are going to look at the digital route. Even risk management is now taking shapes of being digitally addressed, and it is more easy for a loan to be processed through the use of artificial intelligence and behavioral sciences. For companies, especially those who are funded or the SMEs, please look out for strategic collaborations or mergers. These could be investor forced or these could be opportunistic. When I say strategic collaborations, these could be with large companies, large entities, because there are replacement cost is so high, so it is better for them to buy out or acquire a company which is already there, done that, especially for those tech capabilities. Okay, the cost of tech is going to be significantly higher for these large companies, and the time taken to implement those new transformations is also going to be significantly high, and the loss of revenue because they haven't done this is also going to be seriously looked at. Look at strategic investments, related segments focused by very large anchor influencers, like for example non-banking finance companies which are not digitally oriented today. Let the fintechs reach out to them, collaborate or merge with them. These are possibilities which will happen.
I'd like to give an example. I'd like to give an example of our own thing. We've actually tied up with a technology company, and we are in discussions with a large NBFC.
Non-banking finance company.
Yeah, for the digital transformation. Okay, so there are things to be done out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And remodel business, especially the prop tech, the real estate company, these are for survival and continued interest. So real estate companies which are now saddled with completed projects, if they attempt to sell them, they would have to sell at a significant discounts. Instead, can they look up to these prop tech and the co-living companies, tie up with them, create a model where there is a regular recurring revenue in the form of rental revenues? Can these be bundled? Can these be looked at being provided as a real estate investment? There could be a lot of investors who want to look at rental investments and invest into those companies in the form of, say, mutual funds, bonds, so on and so forth. So these are some of the critical decisions which needs to be taken by either the prop tech company forefronting it or the real estate company based on the risks which they are having. SMEs, again, these have to be willing to change, restructure their model. Their debt heaviness is going to have very little takers. Okay, there are not going to be many investors who would want to invest into SMEs because of their debt heaviness. Unless and until these are properly moderated and reduced, it is going to be difficult. So hence, in order to build size, consider mergers, look at acquisitions, reach out to your own network and see whether you can build mass by tying up with each other, providing each other the benefits of the synergies. Okay.
The critical thing I would like to add on here is collaboration is the new norm. Together you can win. So try and look at someone who has an adjacent type of a business, see if you all can get together and then create mass like what RK was talking about.
Yeah, one of the preferred segments which we have missed out is glaring, that is EdTech. And we are seeing huge things coming over there. It is a most preferred segment, and the way education is being done in this country is going to change phenomenally.
Absolutely. This is also applicable for training. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. In the interest of time, I'm just going to proceed quickly so that we leave time for this. To all the participants, this other than what we talked about, how the business is to be structured, modeled, remodeled. Also, we've talked about what do you need to look out, what is the investor looking out from a valuation point of view. We talked about what would be investor sentiments. And here is a quick checklist for each of you all as you all are looking for either raising equity or for raising debt. For the equity side of it, if there is anything related to equity, please look at a business plan which is very, very clear and crisp for the first 12 months. Although we've written 24 months, the first 12 months have to be really, really credible. Okay. Look at the cash runway for the next, especially over this period. And for funded enterprises, it should be a cash runway for about 24 months. This has to be very, very clear. Okay. And what we have to show is the zero-based budget versus actual performance of 6 months. That's where the credibility is going to come in. For those of you all who have been approaching investors, you know it takes anywhere between 4 to 6 months before the term sheet is signed if they are interested. During that time, your performance of your actuals versus the budget is going to be a key differentiator or a make or break. Okay, in all of this, it's very important to stay continuously engaged with your existing investors, with your proposed investors, with your board, with your bankers. And please, 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 some SMBs usually take this as a thing that you're not compliant on some of the payments. That is a big no-no from an investor standpoint. Okay, it's a big no-no. So please stay up to date on your GSTs or other taxes payable and stuff like that. Please do not mess up with your compliance requirement. That's a big no-no from investors. On the debt sides, we know that for the CMA has to be tight, justifying especially over a 3-year period. Earlier, it used to be a 5 or 7-year horizon, but the next 3 years is critical. Like in the equity side, the next 12 to 24 months is critical. And those of you all who have an existing relationship with your bankers, please engage in discussions justifying the need for higher, get into those discussions. Okay, can we move on to the next one?
Yes, Matthew. Last one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Here are some
of the potential funding avenues for equity related instruments. The best bet is the existing investor, then strategic investors. Then we see a lot of interest coming in from expats with cash and expertise who are likely to come back to the country due to this pandemic. These are people who could be reached out to. There are platforms which are getting ready to harness this network. There are angel networks which need to be reached out to those that have already invested in similar companies and focus on potential synergies with their existing investors. Grants from institutions, incubators, accelerators.
Okay, can I add on one point here?
Yes, ma'am.
See, our submission always to SMBs or owners of businesses or thing is, please stay with your expertise areas. If fundraising is not your expertise area, please get a good partner who's an expert in that area and who can help you to get it done. Okay, the requirements of that is very different. The the networking is very, very different. The constant analysis and the engagement with the thing, it takes off a lot of time. So for the business owners, our submission always is, your first focus is you got a business to run. Fundraising is not your primary activity. Okay, so that's a thing. Although I'm coming out a little strong on this, please make sure that running your business is your key priority. Fundraising is something you need to allocate time, but that cannot take a precedence over running the business.
Yeah.
Okay.
For debt raising, the PSU banks are likely to be more aggressive. Yes, there will be a lot of time taken by them, but the chances of getting higher limits are high. Private banks have sort of stepped behind in this during this pandemic, but they are likely to revive. And we expect anywhere between 6 to 8 months for them to come back strongly, similar to what it was earlier. Small SIDBI is one institution which is focusing on startups and project financing. NABARD is very important for as far as agri-tech companies are concerned. These has to be with a clear focus on grants directly to those farmers who could be your potential users, or the farmer producer organizations who could be your potential beneficiary. There are NBFCs and venture debt companies. Venture debt companies typically take a call on a longer term with not necessarily EMI payments, but they look at it more from the ability of the company to scale up. The fintechs focusing on invoice financing, bill discounting, and factoring. The information about this has already been posted in the chat box. You may collect it or individually reach out to us, and we can help you in that. Matthew?
So net, like we said, there is a checklist for us. There is a list of funding avenues which is there. Okay, there is work to be done before you get to the checklist and the funding. There is work to be done in terms of recasting your business model, getting to know what is the urgent and critical, and then look for prioritizing, get into discussions on how do you prioritize them.
And this checklist will also help you in addressing due diligence requirements in a much more informed
Absolutely, manner. Absolutely. Okay, so that's all we have. Any questions? We are open for questions now. And if you all want to reach out to us, our coordinates are up on the slide now, or you can write to Vadvani and Global Linker. We are contactable. Just a small stat we had about from the previous webinar of the other day, we had about 39 of you all asking to be contacted. We shall be reaching out to you over during the course of this week. Okay, thank you so much for your patient hearing. Questions?
Yeah, thanks RK, and thanks Matthew for such a wonderful session about fundraising. I'm sure the participants have gained a lot, and many of them would like to come back to you to discuss their issues around fundraising on a one-to-one basis.
Great.
However, I would like to just float around a few questions from the many that our participants have raised in the interest of time. So one of the questions that our participants have raised is that so as you mentioned that there are two components for any business in terms of having funds from equity sources or debt. So how to what should be the optimal capital structure in terms of equity and debt when we keeping in mind the forward valuation of the company for say the next 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, typically for equity, the skin in the game has to be in the form of cash component, in the form of the effort which the promoters have put in developing a product or a service for the company. The other critical part is their experience which has gone into creating such an organization. Okay, all these factors are given value by investors. It is not that the cash contribution alone is going to decide the factor as far as equity is concerned. Okay, it is the ability of the product or service to earn continuous revenue, create continuous cash generation for the investors is what is going to define future. More importantly, the team which is behind the company is going to be given significant importance, whether it is for valuation or for an investment decision. When you are looking at debt, especially for those traditional SMEs, anything between 2 times to 4 times equity is a safe bet. But having said that, not many banks today are comfortable taking those risks. So for working capital, they would like to shift it the other way around by saying about 20 to 25% of turnover, or look at the quality of the debtors and the inventory cycle before taking a decision. As far as term loans are concerned, these are generally focused on plant and machinery, equipment, so on and so forth, which will eventually create cash generation. Here, typically, it could go up to 4 times the equity. So 20% to 25% margin is expected before they fund.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks a lot. There is another, a situation which one of our attendees have posted, is that, say, for example, the firm is profitable, but they're facing a lot of cash flow issues, which is not appreciated by the top management of the firm. So what would you advise, the firm in terms of keeping the top management in line, because they are having profits, but the issue is cash flow.
Yes. So this is a classic situation. One has to, we had discussed about the cash flow statement during the last webinar. See, most of the people assume that credit sales is something which is going to enable generation of cash. A company is cash flow positive only if that comes back. So critical for the company is to address the debtors very, very seriously. So irrespective of the number of sales you have made, it will not affect your net profitability. You will still be profitable while your money hasn't come yet.
Yeah, I'd like to add
Once you are profitable.
Yeah. See, the cash flow issues can come in two parts. Either you're getting stuck in terms of your debtors, or in terms of
Inventory.
Inventory, or also in terms of planned versus actual profitability. Yes. Just yesterday, we were having a discussion with a 5 crore company who's been in existence for 20 years. And he says, well, when I'm making my plans, it's looking very good, but actually, paisa kahan hai? That's exactly what he asked.
So the cash flow here is entirely dependent on the type of decisions you have taken with respect to your sales. If it is a credit sales and anything above 90 days debtors is a situation of real worry.
Yeah.
Because whether it is a banker or an investor, they are not comfortable anything over 90 days. So first of all, the company has to understand which segment they are in and try to reduce their debtors significantly.
Aditya, I'm just having a look at some of the questions. Many of these are questions which need a one-on-one discussion. So I'm just going to encourage you all, like Aditya has mentioned, please get in touch with Vadhwani. And, so already, like I said, about 40 of you all had filled in the forms from the last time around. We are in the process of getting in touch with you this week. The others who are having more questions, need more stuff, please connect with Aditya and the Vadhwani Foundation. They will have definitely we have a mechanism whereby RK, myself, or one of my colleagues will reach out to you during within a few days of.
And more importantly, all these are relevant questions. Yeah. So it is better, please post it on our email IDs, and we will take it for sure and answer all this.
Yeah, we will definitely have a one-on-one discussion with you. We are connecting with each one of you all. Some of you all have pointed out we missed out a few things. Yes, you're also human, so give us a little leeway. So some more sectors have to be addressed. Yes, fair enough. The others who need a recording, etc. Aditya, you're in the spot.
So after this webinar, we'll share the PDF of the presentation as well as the recording of the webinar to all the attendees. So rest assured. And as RK and Isaac mentioned, that we understand that a lot of you, many of you would like to have a one-on-one discussion with either RK or Matthew. So please reach out to us. Please fill the diagnostic form or write to them directly, and we will reach out to you to have a one-on-one discussion. In the interest of time.
Sorry, Aditya, just very quickly. So some of you all have said, how do I find the right consultants help and all? Just write to Vadhwani, they'll be able to guide you. That is what Vadhwani is doing. So just Aditya is the guy. See, he's lost all his hair trying to find the expertise for you guys.
I've reached your state, Isaac, at this age. Okay, so we would like to wind up here. And thank you all. Thank you, RK. Thank you, Matthew, for having this session with us.
Sure.
And thanks to all the attendees for being patient and listening to us. Yeah. We assure you that
and the Q&A has got real relevant questions, so we would definitely
very
absolutely.
The chat ones and the Q&A, very high quality comments and questions. We definitely would like to have a snapshot of that so that we can think. And
definitely.
Divya, again, about the mail ID, Aditya is your guy. You can reach out to him. He'll be able to
I would just like to close and thank all the attendees with one last comment, as you mentioned, Matthew, is that, as business owners, we should focus on our business and let the experts manage, fundraising, which is an area of expertise in itself. Okay. So with that thought in mind, thank you everyone for joining us, and we thank you all, and we will